Hello to all. The information I'm about to treat you is taken from www.exposingchristianity.com. The truth about Christian charity. Quote, because the churches are tax exempt, the average citizen pays an additional $925 dollars a year in taxes to support them. End of quote. Quote, according to the International Revenue Service, church donations total over $19 billion a year. This does not include profits from businesses, stock holdings, bond holdings, retirement centers, or lease-back arrangements. End of quote. Quote, the Mormon Church alone collects at least $4.3 billion a year from its members and another $400 million from its many business enterprises purchased with tax-exempt donated money. End of quote. Quote, the churches own $81 billion worth of tax-exempt real estate in Texas and $1.3 billion in Los Angeles County alone. County or country, I don't know. Consider the prime real estate owned by them in New York City, Chicago, Boston. In every state, the amount involved is staggering. End of quote. Quote, every tax dollar that the church avoids paying you as an individual taxpayer must make up. End of quote. Growing in power and ownership, the Christian churches own 20-25% of all the real estate in America. Taken from the book Your Church Doesn't Want You to Read, Tom C. Lidom, editor, 1993. The house chaplain's salary in 1993 was $115,000 or million, I don't know, and 300 dollars. The Senate Champlain's salary was about the same, with an additional $300 million budget dollars, including pay for secretaries and office space. On the subject of abortion, this is definitely a personal issue, but I want to expose what is being done behind the scenes of the Christian pro-life movements. First off, I want to mention, if Christianity had not held us back, there will be effective birth control. Forced subsistence is not healthy and it does not work. As for the Christian Church and the Catholic stance on banning birth control and abortion, this is another huge money-making racket. The children are the ones who pay. The intentions behind this, made available on the public as propaganda, come with the pretext of goodwill and humanitarianism. Behind the scenes, there is the true story. American atheists did not expose on Mother Teresa some years back. This woman has received millions, if not more, in donations. Most of the money is unaccounted for. The largest number of victims of the pro-life movement are from third world countries. Most of these countries in Africa, Central and South America, and Asia have been exploited and infested with Christianity. Missionaries and forever returning to these areas of the world are as prime hosts for their vicious agenda, as these people are poor and illiterate. To feed, clothe, and house an individual in most of these places, it costs only 10 cents a day and a bowl of rice. Children are walking around emaciated in rags and filthy. The mortality rate is high, and the churches use this to rake in millions upon millions in tax-exempt donations to give to these children. The sad fact is little or nothing ever reaches the children. Because the infant mortality rate is so high due to starvation and disease, the Catholic Church exploits this with a ban on birth control and abortion. This in turn provides the church with more foster children to use to rake in more money, keeping the unfortunate babies coming. In addition, many of these children are viciously and brutally used for slave labor. The Jewish owned and operated corporate monopolies want cheap slave labor in the way of disposable human beings who can be systematically worked to death, no different from Jewish communism. With the Western currency markup in each of these countries, the Church could easily afford to have the entire Third World living decently. This is nothing more than a tragic money-making racket. In the rare event these Christian leaders are ever investigated, the dirt found on them is endless. The Christian Church, with all of its tax-exempt wealth and funding, has organized into a powerful voting bloc. Quote, they have tied up so many senators and representatives having their own religious lobbying groups that it has been next to impossible to enforce any kind of tax laws or tax violations against them, allowing them to continue to gain in power with ultimate funds, unlimited funds. End of quote. In Mexico, poor barefoot ragged people walk down a burning dusty road for 15 miles to attend a lavish church that takes a percentage of their income while they live in slum-like conditions with dwelling of dirt floors and a corrugated tin for a roof. The churches are lined with gold and continue to tithe from these people. Christian charity is a sham. They give us as little as possible up front before the public to keep a humanitarian image, but most of these donations line the pockets of their preachers and are funneled into organized criminal activities and for the advancement of Jewish communism. The problems people come to them with are rarely, if ever, elevated. Drug addicts are taught to pray and so forth. They are kept from power, meditation, and knowledge of the soul, which would heal their cravings. People remain cripples in the Christian system and are used for exploitation. Newbies who come to Jesus are taken in again and again, but Jesus doesn't last long, and the person backslides into worse conditions than before, as in addition to their problems and misfortune circumstances that brought them in, Jesus shits on them. Most of the Christian donations go to fund war and organized criminals activities. The National and World Council of Churches includes the membership of the Lutheran, Episcopal, Baptist, Presbyterian, Methodist, and other denominations. Quote, the World Council of Churches and its affiliate, the National Council of Churches, supported by church-donated dollars, quietly help to finance selected covert operations and wars. End of quote. Quote, mainline churches support left-wing causes and killings, and fundamentalist churches support right-wing causes and killings. The blood is on the hands of every donor. End of quote. Quote, in the chilling testimony given at American University in Washington, D.C. and televised over C-SPAN on December 12, 1989, ex-CIA officer John Stockwell told how the Christian Contras burst into the huts of innocent villagers. He saw them drag a man out of one house and concentrate him in front of his wife and children. These savages next raped his wife, then cut off her breasts with their bayonets. Their terrified children were forced to watch. Again, these atrocities were partially financed by the dollars put in the collection plates of the neighborhood churches that tell the faithful that these special collections go to the World Hunger Fund. Compounding the tragedy, the Nicaraguans are wonderful people, love Americans, and still cannot understand why America would do this to them. End of quote. Jesus doesn't heal drug addicts. It is nothing but a huge money-making racket and the exploitation of human beings. Something must be replaced with something, not nothing. The Christian victim usually backslides. People with serious drug habits need to mend the weak areas and holes in their hours and empower themselves with the energy they need so they will not slide into addiction again. The Christian churches provide none of this. They only lure people who are desperate into exploit them for their money. The victim pays large sums of money and is given new problems he or she did not have before in exchange. The Nazarini and Yilk sap the victim's self-esteem, confidence, and vital energies, setting him or her up for a relapse into addiction. The relapses received with the victim being told he or she is a sinner and needs to repent, further lowering self-esteem, personal worth, and confidence in one's ability that is so drastically needed to overcome the addiction. This sets up a vicious cycle of human exploitation and cruelty. Satan gives us the strength, self-esteem, and power to beat drug addiction. When one's chakras and aura are healthy, one does not crave these kind of substances to make up for psychic deficiencies. In closing, the social services with the welfare department and other state government-run agencies, the Red Cross and so forth, all do hundreds of times over more to aid on the privileged and poverty-stricken than those the Christian churches. In addition, unlike the Christian churches and missions, they don't demand your freedom, your mind, and your soul. The book of your church doesn't want you to read. Tom C. Lidom, editor, 1993. I bet the chapter titled The Tax-Free Right, pages 341 to 349. I bet. Thank you for listening and